The Forest River CEO leak isn't just industry gossip, it directly affects you.
In an Elkhart County R-vee plant, the 911 call coming in just after 7 this morning from Forest River plant number 6.
Because the memo that just surfaced explains exactly why the R-vee market is falling apart in 2025 and how it will impact the prices you pay, the loans you qualify for, and the value of the rig sitting in your driveway. Oversupply, collapsing demand, rising costs, it's all in there. But the most important part is the timeline they tried to bury, a timeline that shows when prices drop harder and when certain R-vees lose thousands in value. If you own an R-vee or plan to buy one, you need to hear this. The Forest River CEO leak. The first sign of trouble did not come from a dealer lot or an auction site. It came from a leaked internal briefing tied directly to Forest River's senior leadership. In that document, the chief executive laid out numbers that were never meant to exit the conference room. Production volume had jumped far beyond sustainable demand, climbing past levels not seen since the post-recession boom more than a decade earlier. The message was blunt. The industry had built too many motorhomes, too quickly, and with too little regard for economic reality. What made the document so striking was the detail. It referenced more than 1,000 excess units sitting in regional holding areas, more than 2,000 stranded at partner lots, and additional freight staging yards carrying loads that should never have been greenlit. These numbers were not rounded estimates or projections. They were pulled from operational sheets dated within the last quarter. The CEO's frustration was evident. The company had entered a cycle where production commitments were locked in long before forward demand signals could be trusted. When interest rates shifted upward and credit tightened, the leadership already knew those units were going to end up discounted or delayed. And although the presentation tried to show a path forward, the subtext was clear. The system had been pushed beyond its limits, and the pressure was beginning to show in every corner of the business. But leaked admissions are only the surface. The real damage shows up when you track the numbers across dealer lots. Oversupply by the data. To understand how severe the oversupply became, you only need to look at inventory data reported across the main wholesale lanes. During the recent peak production window, manufacturers shipped more than 380,000 motorhomes and towable units combined, a figure far above what dealers could reasonably absorb. Archive logs from major dealer networks show more than 45% of those shipments remained unsold beyond the target turnover window. The consequences were immediate. Floor plan interest, which dealers pay on every unit that sits too long, began eroding margins month after month. In a normal environment, a dealer might carry a unit for 35 to 60 days. But internal dealership estimates showed inventories aging past 120 days, then 160, with some lots pushing units past 200 days or more. Once a model crosses that threshold, every passing week turns profit into liability. Pressure increased as more stock continued arriving due to previously locked production schedules. Dealers were forced into a cycle of silent discounting, shifting units between lots, and holding back older stock during peak viewing hours to avoid reminding customers how slow movement had become. Data from wholesale auctions confirmed the trend. Units less than 1 year old were appearing at accelerated rates, often at reduced opening bids. Oversupply does not simply sit on a spreadsheet. It strains every cost tied to storage, financing, staffing, and transport. And in this case, the numbers pointed in one direction. The industry was producing far more than the market could absorb. Yet, oversupply alone did not break the system. The cost of building each unit climbed even faster. If you want clear, fact-driven updates without the noise, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Your feedback helps guide what we investigate next, and your voice keeps these industry issues from getting buried. Stay involved, stay informed, and stay ahead. Production costs skyrocketed. Manufacturing a motorhome has always been expensive, but internal cost sheets from the past 2 years reveal an unprecedented surge in essential inputs. Chassis costs rose sharply, with some platforms increasing by more than 30% due to supply chain strain and freight volatility. Commodity materials such as steel, aluminum, insulation compounds, and plywood showed similar spikes. One internal ledger from a major supplier documented increases across more than 50 line items, each pushing factory budgets toward unsustainable levels. Labor costs also moved upward. Plants were forced to pay overtime during the height of the production wave, even as workforce shortages made scheduling unpredictable. Technical specialists required for wiring, plumbing, and structural assembly had to be retained with higher compensation packages, particularly in regions where competing industries were recruiting aggressively. Freight costs added another layer of strain. Carriers dealing with unpredictable fuel prices revised their rate structures, and multi-stop delivery routes became less efficient as inventories backed up at dealer locations. One Forest River branch reported transportation expenses rising by more than 20% in a single contract cycle. The cumulative effect of these cost increases squeezed margins to a point where even full-price retail sales could not offset the added financial burden. When discounting entered the picture due to oversupply, profitability collapsed even further. Manufacturers found themselves building units at costs uncomfortably close to, or occasionally above, expected wholesale pricing. And with production costs climbing, the industry needed strong demand, but the demand curve went in the opposite direction. The macroeconomic signals that killed sales. Demand for motorhomes is highly sensitive to overall economic conditions, and the macro indicators during the recent downturn pointed toward a steep contraction. Interest rates climbed steadily, raising the effective cost of financing. A typical motorhome loan structured at 6% suddenly looked drastically different when lenders moved those rates closer to 9% or higher. Internal financing calculators showed monthly payments jumping by hundreds of dollars, pushing many prospective deals outside acceptable ratios for loan approval. Credit tightening compounded the issue. Banks and credit unions updated their underwriting standards, raising minimum credit thresholds and lowering allowable debt-to-income levels. These changes were not directed at any single industry. They reflected a wider caution across lending institutions. But motorhomes, being high-ticket items with rapid depreciation curves, were among the first categories to feel the impact. Macroeconomic uncertainty also reduced discretionary large purchase activity. Indicators from manufacturing, freight, and service sectors suggested caution rather than expansion, further influencing lenders and wholesalers. When consumer spending shifted toward essential goods and lower-risk travel options, the demand for new motorhomes dropped faster than internal projections anticipated. By the time quarterly reports circulated through corporate offices, the trend was unmistakable. Units that should have moved steadily through retail channels remained unsold. Forecasts were revised downward, and manufacturers faced a market that simply did not need what had been built. And with demand collapsing alongside oversupply and rising costs, the foundation of the industry entered its most fragile state in years. The affordability wall. The shift in affordability has become the most immediate barrier for anyone attempting to finance a motorhome in the current lending environment. Interest rates on recreational vehicle loans that once hovered around 5% to 6% surged toward 8% and even 9% in several credit union schedules. The difference between a loan at 6% and a loan near 9% on a unit priced around $120,000 is not subtle. Monthly payments rise by several $100s, pushing applications past debt-to-income limits before underwriters even begin reviewing secondary factors. Lenders have tightened their standards more aggressively than the broader public realizes. Internal guidelines from multiple financial institutions show higher minimum credit scores, lower tolerance for variable income, and narrower acceptance bands for existing vehicle or housing debt. One regional credit union reported a rejection rate increase of more than 25% compared to the previous year. This was not due to a sudden shift in borrower quality, but rather a recalibration of risk tied to a softening economy. Payment calculations alone are disqualifying many applicants. When a standard 60-month loan begins drifting into 70 and 2 or 80 and 4-month territory, simply to achieve a manageable figure, lenders consider the structure too risky. The result is a rising number of denied applications, even for borrowers who would have qualified without issue just a few seasons ago. And as financing barriers grow, the market response is shifting sharply toward cheaper, more manageable alternatives. Why cheaper options are now outselling big motorhomes. An unmistakable trend has emerged across dealership data and private sale listings. Smaller, lower-priced units are moving faster than the larger motorhomes that once anchored the industry. Price comparisons tell the story clearly. A new compact travel unit priced near $30,000 and $5,000 often carries a monthly payment less than half of what a full-sized motorhome demands. Even modest interest rate increases do far less damage in the lower price category, making smaller rigs the safer financial choice. Unit movement reports from regional dealers show a significant rotation in demand. Where full-sized motorhomes might sit for 120 days or more, smaller towables and compact rigs frequently move within 30 or 40 days. Lenders also favor these lower-priced units, since the risk of depreciation relative to outstanding loan balance remains far less severe. One dealership invoice cycle reflected this shift directly, showing more than 60% of its recent transactions tied to smaller models, a reversal from the majority motorhome dominance recorded only a couple of years prior. Monthly payment differences drive much of the shift. When a compact unit can be financed with payments under $500 compared to payments closer to $1,000 or more for a large motorhome, the choice becomes practical rather than emotional. This financial clarity has pushed a wave of buyers into the smaller unit segment, leaving larger motorhomes sitting longer and discounting faster. But lower payments alone are not guiding this migration. Reliability concerns have added another layer of caution to the decision. Reliability backlash. Reliability has become a significant pressure point, and the numbers illustrate why confidence has eroded. Recall reports from the past several seasons show major motorhome brands issuing more than 40 separate campaigns, with individual models sometimes requiring multiple rounds of corrective action. Some recalls were minor, but others involved structural fasteners, electrical faults, or safety-critical components. Repair shops, already stretched thin, began reporting wait times of 8 to 12 weeks, leaving owners stuck with unresolved issues far longer than expected. The financial burden has also increased. Warranty invoices reflect rising repair costs due to higher labor rates and component shortages. A typical repair that once cost under $1,000 now frequently approaches $2,000 or more, with some invoices surpassing $3,000 depending on parts availability. Owners attempting out-of-pocket repairs face even steeper challenges, as independent shops struggle with limited access to manufacturer components. Service delays have become a costly inconvenience, with weeks of downtime creating ripple effects through missed trips, storage fees, and unexpected travel adjustments. Smaller units and older models, known for quicker and cheaper repairs, increasingly draw interest as large motorhomes face rising scrutiny. Recalls, extended wait times, and higher repair costs have built a clear perception that bigger rigs carry risks their prices no longer justify, accelerating the shift away from full-size motorhomes. Combined with affordability pressures and trust issues, many households are now redirecting their travel budgets entirely outside the motorhome market. The quiet buyer exodus. As financial pressures increase and confidence in large motorhomes weakens, households are quietly shifting their travel budgets toward alternatives that offer lower risk and greater flexibility. Cabin rentals show steady growth, with booking data indicating year-over-year increases across several regions. Auto-based travel has also gained momentum, with many opting for upgraded vehicles or hybrids rather than committing to the cost of a motorhome. Smaller towables and used units continue to absorb demand because of their affordability and reduced financial exposure. Travel spending patterns confirm the trend. Families who once considered motorhomes now allocate funds toward shorter, more cost-controlled vacations. Cruise lines have reported booking surges tied to promotional pricing, and state parks have noted increased occupancy from travelers using basic equipment instead of full-size rigs. The appeal is simple. These options require no major loans, no long repair queues, and no unpredictable depreciation curves. Used units priced under $20,000 offer safer entry points than new models exceeding $100,000, thanks to lower insurance, storage, and maintenance costs. This shift shows travelers redirecting spending toward options that protect budgets and avoid long-term financial commitments. And as these patterns reshape the market, the industry faces pressures that become even clearer when viewed from inside the factory floor in the next section. Hours cut, shifts canceled, lines sitting idle. The most visible sign of the industry's strain appears on the factory floor, where production rhythm has slowed to a level not seen in more than a decade. Internal workforce reports show several plants reducing scheduled hours by more than 35%. What were once stable 40-hour weeks have shifted toward fluctuating schedules where employees are sent home early or placed on standby with little notice. One regional facility, operated by a major manufacturer, reported canceling more than 20 scheduled shifts within a single quarter due to excessive inventory and limited downstream movement. Production lines that once operated with predictable momentum now sit idle for extended stretches. Photographs documented by internal auditors show partially assembled units paused mid-process, with teams reassigned to cleanup or maintenance tasks simply to fill time. Output charts, tracked over the past 3 reporting cycles, reveal a consistent downward slope, with month-over-month reductions reaching as high as 20 and 8%. Supplier pauses delayed key components, stalling assembly lines and creating cascading disruptions that even crew rotations could not overcome. With hours cut, shifts canceled, and machinery idle, factory floors revealed conditions, financial statements softened, showing an industry adjusting out of necessity, not choice. And as production slowed, internal leadership prepared a set of directives that revealed an even deeper level of urgency. Forest River's internal panic. Inside Forest River's upper management, urgency grew into something closer to organizational alarm. Leaked internal bulletins circulated among department leads spelled out the company's stance in unambiguous terms. Production targets would be reduced across multiple divisions. Cost control mandates were expanded. All discretionary spending outside safety, warranty compliance, and essential operations was placed under direct executive review. One of the messages, time-stamped within the last planning cycle, included the phrase "adapt or disappear," underscoring the seriousness of the situation. These directives were not broad motivational slogans. They were numbered action items tied to measurable outcomes. Division managers were instructed to cut operating expenses by predetermined percentages, streamline labor requirements, and consolidate any overlapping functions. Several units were told to halt prototype development for upcoming model years until revised financial models could justify continued investment. Engineers and project leads received additional memos outlining expectations to reduce material complexity and shorten build cycles. Leadership treated the slowdown as a structural correction, demanding weekly performance reports and reevaluated long-term commitments. These measures showed how quickly confidence shifted, turning manageable headwinds into a sustained challenge that required tighter discipline and coordinated action across every operational department. Those directives set the stage for a redesign cycle unlike anything the industry had attempted in years. Smaller, simpler, cheaper motorhomes by necessity. As corporate pressure intensified, engineering teams were pushed into a redesign cycle driven not by innovation ambitions, but by strict financial limits. Plans for larger, more complex motorhomes were shelved in favor of compact structures with simplified component layouts. Material sheets reviewed during the redesign meetings showed clear targets to reduce overall unit weight and eliminate redundant assemblies. In several cases, multi-layer construction methods were replaced by single structure alternatives to streamline production and cut material costs. Engineers were tasked with identifying every area where build time could be shortened without violating safety standards. Wiring harnesses were rerouted to reduce installation hours. Plumbing layouts were consolidated to minimize fittings and reduce leak risk. Modular interior components were introduced to allow faster installation with fewer skilled labor steps. One design revision aimed to cut more than 20% from assembly time while maintaining acceptable durability metrics. Redesign efforts focused on cost discipline, using simpler components to reduce supply complexity and abandoning feature-heavy plans. Faster development cycles became essential, allowing factories to launch cheaper, reliable models that matched economic reality and replaced high-cost units no longer supported. But even the most disciplined redesigns could not overcome the biggest obstacle, a supply chain facing breakdowns at nearly every link. If you want ongoing coverage as these numbers shift through 2020 and 5, make sure you subscribe. Every update we share is built to protect your wallet and keep you ahead of the next move. Stay ready for what comes next. Supplier breakdown. The supply chain supporting motorhome production entered one of its most unstable periods as financial stress reached critical levels. Several component suppliers, especially those managing specialized parts, reported severe cash flow challenges. In a span of 2 operating quarters, internal correspondence documented at least 3 suppliers seeking emergency financing and 2 entering formal bankruptcy protection. These disruptions created immediate shortages that rippled through assembly lines. Delivery delays compounded the issue. Components that previously arrived within 7 to 10 days now required 3 or 4 weeks, with some specialty parts stretching even longer. Freight documentation revealed missed delivery windows becoming routine rather than exceptional. When a critical electrical module or chassis subassembly failed to arrive, entire production lines were forced into unplanned pauses. Manufacturers scrambled to reorganize build schedules, but repeated shortages made reliable planning nearly impossible. Discontinued components and supplier cutbacks forced constant redesigns, while larger vendors faced staffing and inventory constraints. These combined disruptions strained every stage of production, slowed output, and exposed deep supply chain vulnerabilities that extended far beyond showrooms and proved impossible to resolve quickly. With internal mechanics strained across production lines, leadership, engineering, and supply chains, the next phase becomes understanding how these pressures shape financial decisions moving forward. Prices, depreciation, and timing windows. Price trends entering 2020 and 5 point toward a market still adjusting to oversupply and slow movement. Data pulled from retail listings across several regions shows new motorhome prices dropping between 10 and 15% from their peak, with certain models recording reductions closer to 20% when dealers apply incentive stacking. While price cuts attract attention, the real factor to watch is depreciation. A motorhome that loses 15% of its value before the first year ends can place owners into negative equity if financed with minimal down payment. Depreciation curves from past soft markets offer a clear pattern. When inventory remains high and lending tightens, the first quarter typically carries the steepest price declines. Internal retail timing charts suggest discount cycles often align with dealer fiscal reporting periods, especially at the close of each quarter. Those windows tend to bring additional markdowns as dealers clear inventory to reduce floor plan interest costs. Timing matters. A buyer stepping into the market too early may miss upcoming incentives triggered by seasonal cycles. Conversely, waiting too long risks entering a market where certain models become scarce due to halted production or reduced shipments. The balanced approach is to monitor pricing across several nearby dealers, compare incentives month over month, and identify whether stock turnover is accelerating or slowing. Price timing is only part of the picture. Economic pressure on communities creates ripple effects that influence long-term ownership costs. Community fallout. When major manufacturers reduce shifts or cut positions, the effect spreads far beyond the factory. Many regions that support motorhome production rely on a network of local businesses tied to service work, parts distribution, and seasonal travel traffic. A slowdown at the factory level often leads to reduced hours at nearby service shops, fewer specialty technicians available, and longer queues for routine maintenance. These delays ultimately affect ownership costs, as extended wait times can conflict with warranty conditions or travel plans. Service shop availability becomes a significant factor. When technicians leave the industry due to inconsistent work, replacement staffing becomes difficult. This leads to extended appointment windows or reduced service capacity. Owners in affected regions may face higher maintenance prices or additional travel distance to reach a functioning shop. Independent repair centers may also adjust pricing as demand shifts unpredictably. Local economic strain reduces campground, supplier, and transport activity, disrupting pricing stability and repair availability. When job losses rise, service variability increases and operational costs climb, creating a ripple effect that links regional employment trends trends directly to long-term financial planning for motorhome ownership. As these local pressures mount, the broader travel landscape is shifting, and motorhomes no longer occupy the position they once held. A changing mobility culture. Travel behavior has evolved as economic conditions tighten, and motorhomes are no longer the default choice for extended leisure trips. Cost per mile calculations show how quickly expenses can accumulate. Fuel alone represents a considerable portion of trip cost, especially when traveling long distances with a motorhome that averages lower fuel efficiency than standard vehicles. When combined with maintenance expectations and increased repair times, the overall equation becomes less appealing compared to other travel methods. Tourism data collected across several states shows increased participation in cabin rentals, auto-based road trips, and hybrid travel models where travelers combine short flights with local rentals. These options remove long-term storage, insurance, and maintenance obligations. Financing patterns reflect this change as well. Auto loan approvals remain comparatively stable, while motorhome financing has tightened sharply. Travel costs now favor flexible, low-commitment options, with shorter trips or multi-purpose vehicles proving cheaper and more predictable than maintaining a large motorhome. Rising park fees widen the gap further, making economic efficiency outweigh lifestyle appeal and pushing motorhomes out of their former travel position. With these shifting conditions, the practical question becomes how to navigate the market safely and protect your financial position. Your financial playbook. A clear approach is essential when assessing options in the current market. The first step is identifying which models carry the highest depreciation risk. Units priced above $100,000 tend to experience larger first-year value drops, especially in an environment where inventory remains high. Avoid models with complex feature sets or limited production runs, as these often bring higher long-term repair costs and reduced parts availability. Consider units that demonstrate stable resale patterns. Smaller, well-maintained options often show more predictable depreciation curves. Used models priced in the $20,000 to $30,000 range allow buyers to bypass the steepest depreciation period while keeping purchase exposure manageable. When evaluating listings, confirm that maintenance records are documented and verify that common wear items have been addressed. Balancing timing with local inventory is essential, as late quarter and early off-season discounts are often strongest. Tracking regional prices and month-to-month changes helps avoid overpaying, allowing disciplined buyers to prioritize stable long-term costs and enter the market with greater financial confidence. And with these principles in place, the full picture of the 20 and 25 motorhome landscape becomes far easier to navigate. Alright, that's the full breakdown of the Forest River CEO leak. Now, I want to hear from you. Are you buying, selling, waiting, or just watching the market fall apart from the sidelines? Let me know in the comments. If this helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes, hit like, share it with someone who needs the warning, and make sure you subscribe for the next wave of updates.